Thank you. Thank you, Tanya. Thank you, everyone, for being here for the last talk. We made it. We did it almost. Before we go and meet more cool people, I want to talk to you about this transition to a more senior engineer role and how that means that you must be intentional about how you spend your time and the work that you do. So I'll start by talking about how your role changes and why it's important for you to be intentional. I'll share with you the process that I use to do that by setting goals and keeping track of them. And then finally, how that process can help you in more than one way. So you don't need manager in your title to be a leader in engineering teams. More and more companies are investing in this individual contributor track to support engineers as they grow. Leaders need to set their own goals, balancing personal, team, and company priorities, and to define what to do and what not to do. This is important for both managers and individual contributors once they reach a more senior level. My current role, as Tony said, is a principal engineer, but I have a confession to make before we start. I used to be a manager for many years. And I know I just said that you don't need that manager in your title to be a leader and have that experience, but being a past manager helped me a lot when I moved to a principal engineer role. I learned a lot as part of my role as a manager from formal training, from my own manager, from my peers. And companies usually provide formal training and support for new managers. Unfortunately, this is not as common when someone goes to a more senior individual contributor promoted role. I think mostly because becoming a manager is a more common transition to make. There are more resources. There are a lot more similarities on how managers work across departments. So your company might have already some formal training for all managers. And as I said, I use a lot of my skills as a manager when I move to this role, but not everyone will have that transition, will make that transition like that. So it's important for StaffPlus engineers to be given support in areas such as communication, leadership, mentorship, and many others. So I'm really happy to see more books, more blogs, and conferences like this one to support StaffPlus engineers. Companies should really be proactive about this and not expect us to just learn on the job. So, you got promoted and you're a StaffPlus engineer. What does that role look like? It depends. So that's a very familiar phrase. We've heard it many times today when we're talking about trade-offs and decisions that we're making, but your role and your personal development also depends. Depends on the company that you work for and how it's organized and how teams are organized there. It depends on the role expectation as defined by your company career levels, if you have one. And it also depends on you, like your personal experience and your preferences and how you want to take your career. But these different roles usually have one thing in common. You're expected to be more autonomous. This might mean that you're expected to be closer to the edge of your team, so you're kind of a bridge between your team and the rest of the organization. Or it might even mean that you don't belong to one specific team anymore, which is my case. So you might be working with groups of teams regularly, or you might be changing teams depending on your goals, but you don't belong to like one specific team long term. So how does that change impact you? Before, when you were part of a team, your goals were your team's goals. Like you might have also your own personal goals, but your main focus was to deliver on what your team was supposed to deliver. Now that you're not part of a team anymore, how do you know what you should be focused on? Before, again, when you're part of a team, you were part of the team meetings and rituals and communications, Slack channels, and so on. Now that you're not part of a team anymore and a part of the team rituals, how do you know what's going on around you? How do you keep track of and keep context of what's happening? Again, before you were evaluated mostly on execution and delivery of projects. Now, as I said, you're evaluated on your leadership skills, communication, strategic thinking, coordination. Like coding is just one of the many things that you do. So what else should you be doing? This role change not only expands like the scope and the impact of the work, but it also kind of changes the type of work that you do. So let's talk about how you can find this new kind of work. If you don't actively think about your goals and what you're doing, it's really easy to just be this busy cat, do busy work and don't have an impact. So this busy work can be urgent tasks, but it can also be work that maybe you're not the most suited person to be doing anymore. For example, if you're mostly coding, when maybe there are better ways for you to be more effective. There is definitely always plenty of busy work, plenty of urgent work to be done. But you know that that's not the highest leverage work that you can do. You know that you should be doing like high impact work. So where do you find the magic backlog of high impact work? You create it. It's yours to build. So as a StaffPlus engineer, it's up to you to identify and define what you should be working on. Your role now is to gather context and evaluate opportunities to help shape what you and even what other people and other teams might be working on. So I'll talk you through the process that I use to create this personal backlog of ideas and problems, maybe similarly to how a team would have their own backlog of work. Big caveat here is that what I'm describing was not created in a day. It was an iterative process that I keep evolving and changing as I learn more. So I hope this talk will give you a kickstart, but it's up to you to decide and shape it to what you need and how much you want to take it. So take from it as much as you want, and as a big suggestion someone said before, start small. So let's go through the process. A backlog needs a list of inputs, so these are all the possible things that you could be doing. So where do you find that? The first place to look is your business and product strategies for your company. Those are your main drivers. So do you understand your current business strategy? Do you know how your product or focus area fits within the wider business or company strategy that you have? Can you think ahead, look ahead, what's coming in the next quarter, in the next year? What are the risks and opportunities that might be coming ahead? If you're working closely with a team or a group of teams, think about what they might be needing. So is there any executional challenges ahead? Are there any riskier or more ambiguous projects that you can help support? At this point, what I do is I review the team's plans for the next quarter and try to spot anything that might need my help. And I also talk to their managers and see if there's anything that they might think might be useful to help with. The other thing to do here is always to look ahead again, think about if there's any work that you can help prepare, disambiguate ahead of the team, so that by the time the team takes it on, it's more concrete and validated. And then look at your department. So the engineering organization, are there any kind of cross-team initiatives that can help elevate all of engineering that you might want to join or even propose? For example, it could be a technical strategy for the engineering org, automated testing, but it could also be around people and process, like recruiting or ways of working. These are not just for managers. It's really important to have input from engineers too. And I added here some tips for managers. So sometimes it's really hard to know what to expect from your manager now that you're in this role. So here, I think at this point, what you can get from your manager is context. So they might be in more meetings, like leadership meetings, cross-team meetings that you're not. So they can help you here by sharing context and creating connections with other teams or other leaders to help you create this list of inputs. Cool, so you have a list of things, now we prioritize them. So companies' needs first, I guess. That's what we're hired to do. So your main goal should be the most important thing that you're doing to drive that and help the company goals based on their strategy. The next item that I use to prioritize is risk. So risk can be in many different areas. So it could be a product or a technical risk, for example, a complex project or a problem space that you haven't worked before. It could be operational risks, like scaling things, performance. But again, it could even be organizational risks, so new teams forming or teams that don't have enough senior engineer support that might need your help. And then finally, match your personal growth areas with these initiatives that you identified and prioritized. So think about your last performance review. What feedback did you get? What are the areas that you need to develop? And for the areas that you're strong at, look at the next level, if you have it. Look at what that next level looked like. Can you stretch yourself? What would that look like? So from your backlog, you should identify any items that you want to drive or make the case for that will be, based on company and risk priorities, but also will help you with your personal growth goals. Here, your managers can help you by giving good performance review feedback, obviously, and also if you're proposing a new project, they can help you by sponsoring that project that you're proposing. Finally, you have an amazing list of prioritized items here. It's really gold, but you won't have time to tackle everything. So how do you trim it down? It was mentioned before with delegation, right? Share what you've uncovered. So mentoring and growing engineers is also part of your job. So Again, talk to your manager, talk to other managers, and share what you've uncovered and help find other people that might take on some of these items that you found out. Cool. Okay, so this is what we have now. An achievable backlog, right, by you, of prioritized items, prioritized by company needs and risks, and they're also aligned with your personal growth goals. Time to write it down. So this will help you keep track of your goals and share it with others. Use the tool of your choice. This is my spreadsheet that I use. But definitely pick something that you feel comfortable with to kind of refer to regularly and update it regularly as well. So I use a spreadsheet. I'll go through the format that I use. So each row is a goal. The first column is a copy of the principal engineer level area that is kind of related to this goal. So I just use this as a reference. It makes it clear how this goal aligns with my personal growth goals and what are the expectations for me as a principal engineer. So this is how my manager is going to measure my impact. So it's good to have that as a reference to align the scope and the impact of the work expected and the area that is the focus of this goal. So just a copy of that. Now, these are the hard ones. So the commitment is what I'll do. So I'll deliver on a technical strategy for an area, I'll evaluate a new technology, support an engineer as they drive a project, something like that. The impact is, if I do this right, what are the benefits that we're going to see? Like, how will the world be a better place if I achieve my commitments? And yeah, this one is really hard to articulate, and I find it difficult every time. If there are any ways that you can measure this impact, like any metrics that you can track, that's great, but I find that that's not always possible. Feedback from people that you're working with and hopefully will benefit from the work that you're doing is really useful. So one exercise that I like to do is to think about the feedback that I would hope to get by the time I'm finished with this goal. So by the time I achieve my commitments, what would I expect the people that I work with to say? And think about that and frame it as the impact that you hope to have. And then the final two are about setting expectations of my involvement. So role is, am I the driver or am I part of a working group or a supporter? And then priority is either the main goal or everything else is the secondary. So here's an example. At Intercom, as principal engineers, we're expected to monitor and raise the bar for good technical design. The commitment is to define and implement an engineering-wide metric for code quality. And then the impact is that teams can monitor their code quality and invest in improvements when needed. And again, I say this is hard to write because if I would write it again, I would probably add some metrics around how many teams are actually engaged in those metrics and making decisions using them. So I would rewrite that. And I'm the driver, and it's my main goal. And then as a secondary goal, we're expected to grow capacity at staff and principal level. So the commitment is to coach someone as they're driving a project by having one-on-ones and joining the early project discussions. And the impact is that this person will be able to grow and submit a promotion proposal in the next cycle. And it's a supporter role as a secondary goal. Cool. Okay, so you have a first draft, but you might be missing some context. So now it's a good time to share with other people. First, with your manager. So hopefully this is not news to them, right? So this is a continuous process. You've been getting regular feedback. So it's more to say, this is what I have. Is it good enough to share with other people? Share with your peers. So it's a good time to talk to other StaffPlus engineers to see if you have the right coverage across StaffPlus engineers for the riskiest areas that you've identified. And also share with your cross-discipline peers. So if you work closely with designers, product managers, or others, like in the context of the area that you work with, like share with them. This is a great way to answer that question of like, how do I know what's going on? Is you're forming relationships with teams and other disciplines, which in turn helps you gather the context that you might need, or that you might be missing by not working with the team anymore. Okay. And now you share it even more widely. So you're happy, your manager is happy, share it with everyone. So what I do is not that spreadsheet, but I write a public version of that document that's kind of easier to digest, that has my goals and my commitments and the context on why I prioritize those goals. If you're expected to be working on something that you're not, and that sometimes can happen, it's also useful to add that. So say, I'm not doing this because of this. I also use this document as a chance to reiterate how principal engineers work. and what to expect from me. So the way that I work is sometimes I might be working more closely with teams, and other times I might be more hands-off. So it's a good time to clarify how teams can work with me and what they can expect from me. So, and this is not a one-off process. Obviously, you should find the right cadence for you to review your goals and iterate on them. Again, my example here, this is my timeline. At my company, we plan quarterly roadmaps for teams, so it's a good cadence for me to set my own goals per quarter as teams are defining their own goals. So I define my goals quarterly. Each quarter, we break down into 2 6-week cycles, so I set milestones for those cycles on what I want to achieve. Breaking it down really helps estimate, because it's a lot easier to think about, 6 weeks rather than a whole quarter. And I also use this weekly cadence to track my progress. So on a weekly basis, I review each milestone for each goal and plan my week ahead based on what I want to what progress I want to make. And I also use that weekly review to keep track of what I've done. So I write down what I've achieved, including any outcomes or any impact that I had. And I also, when it happens, I like to write down any positive feedback or any kind of things that I'm proud of. So I use the second 6-week period to review my progress overall and reprioritize the goals or rescope it if needed. And then when the next quarter comes, I review the previous quarter's progress and decide if I'm going to carry over any of the goals or if they're done, or if they change into something else. So over a quarter is really great to look back and see each step that I took to achieve a goal, what went well and what didn't, and when things got derailed, because they do sometimes, and it's important to adapt and change. So change is definitely going to come, right? So you're happily working towards your prioritized list of goals that you're very happy about, and someone asks you to do something that's mega urgent, important, that needs to be done right now. Like, what do you do now? So first, I guess think about, am I missing any context, right? Have things changed since I set my goals? Things changed, the goals are not set in stone. Really rethink, reprioritize, talk to your manager, and reset if that's the case. Or can it be delegated? Again, another superpower that we have. Is there anyone else that can take this over? Again, talk to your manager, talk to other managers and see. If not, say no. No, say not now, maybe. And explain what your other priorities are and why you can't tackle this right now. I usually find that when you explain the reason behind your no or your not now, people are very understanding. And you can take note of that request, and that can be input for your next goal setting period. Cool. Engineers, yes. Sabrina, what about coding, right? We should be coding, I think. This is an individual contributor role after all. How do I find impactful coding work? I do believe that StaffPlus engineers, we should be still shipping production code, delivering customer value as frequently as we can. It might not happen every day. It might not happen every week. It might not happen every month. But it needs to happen enough that we understand the shape of the code base and the problems that engineers and our customers have. So that's very important. How do you find the time to do that? The same way you find time to do everything else. So you define as any other goals. So setting your priorities with your manager and carving out the time to do it. But think about why you want to spend time coding. What are you going to achieve with that? What's the impact of that work behind just the coding tasks that you might have? As an example, when I joined Intercom, I was part of the on-call rota for a couple of teams. And the goal wasn't just for me to be on rota, it was for me to be exposed to a broad set of areas of our code base and to get a deep dive into the code base guided by real customer problems. So on-call provides a great learning opportunity. I'm a big fan of on-call, like many before me spoke about it. If there is an outage, if there's a bug, it tells you that there's something that is wrong that could be made better, and someone cares about it because they complain. So it's a really good signal that it could be some impactful work. Alice gave a great example yesterday about how a bug became a more spotted a broader issue that they could tackle more holistically. So when you're taking coding tasks, you can use your skills to think beyond just the task at hand and spot these patterns and opportunities to address it in a more holistic way. Another example, this work that I'm doing right now, is to improve performance in a critical product area. And there's a tactical goal to fix a performance issue, but also a strategic one for a long-term plan on how to monitor and prevent performance regression. So you have the scope and experience to identify and then advocate to get the resources to help solve some of these kind of wider problems that you spot while you're coding. Cool. So I found that setting my goals intentionally helped me in kind of more than one way. First one, it helps me set expectations and introduce my role to my team, to new teams and new teammates. As I said, this role changes a lot for different companies within the same company and sometimes within the same person, depending on what they're focused on, right? So given how much the role can change, depending on where you are, it's really useful to have a reference for what you're doing and why. So for example, when someone new joins a team that I'm working with, I can point to that public document that I mentioned and say, look, this is what I'm doing. This is how you can work with me. It helps me focus. I think this is really important. So saying no if something comes up or intentionally reprioritizing if needed. It helps me not get distracted by that busy work that I talked about and the non-important tasks. A big one for me is it helps me keep motivated. As leaders, our feedback cycle is definitely less immediate. Changes just take longer to see progress. So we need to find ways to keep energized. And these quarterly goals and the weekly reviews that I do are really good ways for me to keep myself motivated. And then finally, because I tied the goals to my level, it makes my performance review a lot easier for me and for my manager. I have a story to tell about what I've done and the impact that it had. And this intentionality in setting goals and defining how you spend your time can also help you progress to your next career level. So what's next for you? It depends. Where do you go as a StaffPlus engineer? Again, it means it depends on the company, it depends on where you are, and depends on where you want to go, and depends on you as well. But it usually means increasing your level of impact and scope. So maybe you're going from a team to teams to groups of teams to the whole organization. And sometimes you might be at the top of the career level at your company. For the individual contributor track, you might be thinking about going to the management track. That's cool as well. That's also cool. But also, if you want to continue in that individual contributor track and you're at the top, you might be even asked to help define what the next level looks like. So it's part of the autonomy and seniority of the role. Cool. So to kind of bring it all together, as StaffPlus engineers, your role now is to gather context and evaluate opportunities to help shape what you and other people and other teams should be focused on. So it's important to think about what you want to achieve and why. And you can do this by creating this backlog of high impact work. You prioritize by company needs and risks and align to your personal growth areas. You trim it down by delegating it. You share it widely and getting feedback and context in that way. You break it down and keep track of your progress and repeat. Exactly how you do that, it's up to you. But at a senior level, at the senior technical leadership level, you must be intentional about your time and the work that you do. It's part of your job now. Thank you very much, and well done, we made it. Thank you.